Hardknott Pass is not the hardest climb in the UK. Here are 7 climbs which are harder than Hardknott Pass. Number 4 is controversial, and number 7 is the hardest climb I've personally ever gone up, and it broke me. It was horrible. It was so challenging, it was ridiculous. Right, before we go into these 7 climbs, caveat, these climbs are going to be considered just on their own. So take Hardknott Pass, for example, which we're talking about. People who have ridden Hardknott Pass during the coast to coast, when it's right at the beginning, are going to have a very different experience compared to people who have ridden it in the Fred Whitton, which is after 93 miles. So I'm going to try and compare these 7 climbs with the idea that all things are equal. So if you're looking for your next challenge after you've beaten Hardknott Pass, these 7 climbs may be the one for you. Before we get into climb number 1, which will be Abdon Burf in the Shropshire Hills, we're just going to go over the stats of Hardknott Pass so we know what we're comparing it to. Right, so for Hardknott Pass, we've got, it averages 13.3%, it maxes 33%, and it goes on for 1.4 miles long. And on Simon Warren's rating, the author of the 100 climbs, he gave it a rating of 10 out of 10 for difficulty. The first half a mile averages 14%. The middle section averages 8.5%. And the final third, which has the 33% bit in, averages 16.4%. Right, so now we've got a benchmark of what Hardknott Pass is. We're now going to move on to climb number 1, which is Abdon Burf. Right, so Abdon Burf, it averages 11. It maxes 24, averages a mile, and Simon Warren has given it an 11 out of 10 rating. So he's rated it higher than Hardknott Pass. Looking at those initial numbers, it's shorter, the average is lower, the max gradient is lower. You'd think, how the hell is this rated harder than Hardknott Pass? You got a deep dive, you got a deeper dive, put my tongue back in, you got to dive deeper into the numbers of this climb. Right, so the first half a mile averages 22% and has a max 24%. It's brutal. It just goes on and on and on and on and on and on, and it feels like it's never going to end. It's a gun barrel straight road as well, really narrow. Luckily, it is a closed road to traffic, so you just have to go through the gate and then you're going up. But with the fact it's a closed road and there's no traffic going up it, the road is horrendous. It's under tree cover. At the bottom, there is moss, there is gravel. Getting any kind of traction is ridiculous. It's so difficult, and it goes from flat to vertical instantly. So you've really got to be pushing down the pedals. If you was to go there, I've tried before on a day where it rained the day before, unless you've got mountain bike tyres, and even then it may be a struggle. Grip is at an absolute premium. So I went back, I think it was later the same year in 2022. Went back on a dry day where it's been dry for the previous week, and even then traction was really difficult. I went up, wheel span, couldn't restart. Luckily it was towards the beginning, so I just turned around, walked back down and went up. But it just goes on and on and on. The road is narrow, so you can weave on it, but it's difficult. It's just half a mile straight up and you can't see the end. And it just feels like it's going on forever and ever and ever. And it's soul destroying. So yeah, it's not just a physical battle, but it is mentally so challenging. The second half is very easy. It averages 6%. It's a doddle, but that's not why this climb is rated 11 out of 10. It's all to do with that first half a mile. It's just insanely difficult. It's also the highest peak in the Shropshire Hills at 1,746 feet atop of Bwlch Hill. And the view at the top, you get a 360 view. Brilliant. It's one of the best views you'll have in the UK. So you've earned your view at the top, with how hard you've had to work for that first mile. It's a dead-end road at the top, so what goes up must come straight back down the same way. That descent is terrifying. Yeah, I walked part of that, and I have no shame in that. Going on to climb number 2, we go to Snowdonia National Park in the north of Wales for the Cowlyd. This is also a climb I use as part of my training for the Fred Whitton, with the idea of Hardknott Pass at the end. So, stats-wise, let's go into the Cowlyd. It averages 13.6%. It maxes 32%. Goes on for 2 miles, and Simon Warren gave it a rating of 11 out of 10. He also said in his description that this road should come with a government health warning with just how difficult it was. Said he's never been in so much trouble since his time cycling up the Angleroo in Spain. Right, so why is this climb harder than Hardknott Pass? For one, Hardknott Pass reaches 33% once, whereas the Cowlyd goes over 30% on 3 occasions. The first half a mile averages 17%, so that's slightly steeper than the final third on Hardknott Pass, which is the most difficult bit. It also, in that period, hits 30%. After a mini gap in the middle, similar to Hardknott Pass, it averages 15% for the next 6 hairpins, which also it reaches over 30% on 2 occasions. So it's absolutely brutal. And then once you get past the hairpins, you're exposed at the top. It's still averaging over 10%, and it just goes on and on and on and on, with periods where it goes back over 20%. It's really, really challenging. I've done this climb at the beginning of a ride, and I've also done it right at the end, which was my training ride for the Fred Whitton. And the reason why I would say it's more difficult than the Fred is because 1, it's slightly longer. 2, it hits 30% on 3 occasions instead of just 1. And it just goes on and on and on. So yeah, I think the Cowlyd is more difficult than the Fred. Going on to climb number 3, and this is a climb I've attempted twice and have failed twice. I still can't get up it. It is Bamford Clough in the Peak District. Right, so going over the stats here, it averages 23.2%, which is just insane. Has a max gradient of 35%, and is only 0.3 miles long, and Simon Warren gave it a rating of 11 out of 10 for difficulty. Speaking to him also at the 100 Climb Sportives, he told me it took him 3 attempts to get up this. First 2 times he snapped his chain, it was that hard to get up it. Got up it the 3rd time, and he swears he will never return to that climb before, just because of how brutal it is. Anyone who's heard me speak about my gearing knows that I have extremely easy gearing. Bearing in mind my easiest gear is a 30-42. Each time I've got to this Bamford Clough, I feel like I've still not got enough gears, I need more. It's obscene. Things that make it even more difficult than those stats are already telling you. It's a closed road. There's trees over it, so it is always got debris on it from either the leaves or whatever rubbish has fallen off the trees onto it. So grip is at a premium. Do not try this if it is wet. I did try it when it was wet though. That was during the 100 Climb Sportive Sheffield edition. It was raining. I purposely planned it at the beginning of the ride, just like giving myself the best chance of getting up this climb. But there was no grip, and I gave it my all, and I just couldn't get it. It was just wheel spinning, going nowhere. But on that day, there was 74 riders who took part, and only 1 got up the climb. And I remember when I got to the top, when I was walking part of it, due to the grip, I saw this kid. He's hopped over the barrier which has been put on the floor. He's gone down the climb, considering how steep it is and how wet it is. And he's 15 years old. And I was like, oh my God, at the end of this ride, I'm going to hear that someone has had a serious accident. And when I got back to headquarters and spoke to Simon and said, basically asked, like, has there been any accidents? Because I saw that kid going down Bamford Clough, and that was insane. It felt like a death wish he was asking for. Finds out he was the only person who got up it, and he's 15 years old. Just insane. Also, another thing what makes this climb so difficult is these like drainage dips which are in the middle of the road. So like you're already contesting with grip with the debris on the road, where it's kind of like cobbled and it like dips in, and like going over that just makes it even more difficult. So yeah, it may only be a third of a mile long, but it's insane. And I need to go back there this year and give it a third crack, see if I can finally get up it. Right, moving on to climb number 4, and this is the controversial one. I think Wrynose Pass is harder than Hardknott Pass. Now, listen, before you turn off the video, I'm not talking about the side you climb up Wrynose Pass in the Fred Whitton. That side is definitely easier than Hardknott Pass. I'm talking about the side from east to west. So for that climb, it averages 11.5%, max is 25%, is 1.6 miles long, and Simon Warren has given it a difficulty rating of 10 out of 10. So he's ranked it the same difficulty as Hardknott Pass. Now, the reason why I think it's more difficult is because me personally, I'm quite good at little micro rests and I can go again. I recover quite quickly that way. Whilst during Wrynose Pass, you don't get that. The middle mile averages 15% and has no break. It just keeps going and going and going and going and going. There are, I think, 3 occasions where it goes over 20%, and the steepest part, which reaches 25%, is at the end of that mile. Another reason why I think it's harder, and the Cold Dark North, who organises a lot of rides up in the north, and they are very knowledgeable on climbs up there, he agrees with this. The reason why we think it's harder as well is because it's going from east to west. The climb is more often than not accompanied by a headwind, which obviously at any kind of gradient like that, a headwind is not welcomed at all and does make it more difficult. Right, moving on to climb number 5, which is Rowan YHA. Right, so this climb is a mile long. It averages 11%. It says it maxes 30%, but I question that. And Simon Warren gave it a 9 out of 10 rating, which I disagree with. I think it should be higher. The last half a mile averages 19%. So this is very much about the last half. The first half a mile is a doddle. When I tried this climb, it broke me. I had to stop twice. I need to caveat that though. That was after 30 miles of riding, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you bear in mind that I've been doing most of the climbs in the Conway Valley and had 5,500 feet worth of climbing in the legs in 30 miles, the legs were battered. In that last section where I had to put my foot down, like I said, it says it's around 30% is the max, but I've also done Ford Penlec, which is supposed to be the steepest street in the world, which maxes 37.5%. I am convinced, just from the eyeball test, that Rowan YHA is just as steep, or very, very close. And it's just insanely steep. I'd say at the very least, it's a 10 out of 10, maybe even an 11 out of 10. Still not my hardest climb. That's left for climb number 7, so make sure you stay for that. The next climb, and I'm probably going to butcher the way to say this, is the Bwlch y Groes, also known as Hellfire Pass. This is the second highest pass in Wales. Let's go over stats wise. So it averages 12.5%, max is 25%, is 1.8 miles long, and is rated as a 10 out of 10 by Simon Warren. If you take away the immediate end and the immediate beginning, for a mile and a half, this climb averages 13.8%, so close to 14%. But there's no big breaks in the middle, so there's no real micro rest. So the average is actually slightly higher than the total for Hardknott Pass, which was, let's get that, For 1.4 miles, so slightly less duration, it averaged 13.3%, where this climb, Bwlch y Groes, during that mile and a half, averaged 13.8. So it's 0.5% steeper in gradient, even though the max gradient is not. So the 25% section as well comes late in the effort. It comes about the 3/4 point. And yeah, it's really, really challenging. When I went there, it was at the end of a really big day. The same day as climb number 7, which was my hardest ever climb. I lost one of my water bottles. It was 30 degrees. I was battered. I ran out of water when I got to the bottom, but I was saved by this lovely couple. So they live right at the base. They were out in their garden enjoying the beautiful sunshine. And I've got no water left in. And I've got this big beast to get myself up. So I shouted out to them and just politely begged. It's like, my water bottle is empty. Please save me. Can you fill up my water bottle? They didn't want to be filmed, so I've got no footage of them, but they are absolute saints. Not only did they fill up my water bottle, they offered me a can of Coke. My bottle was filled up with ice as well. And they wished me good luck. And I says, well, I can tell you how I get on because I'm coming back down this way afterwards. And they said, oh, brilliant. Stop off again. Tell us how you got on. We'll refill your water bottle up again. Music to my ears, that was. Due to the fact earlier on I lost my water bottle, dehydration was becoming a big problem, and I did cramp on this climb, and I need to go back and try and get up it in one. The views at the top are incredible as well. That one's more, it's just brutal and just carries on. It may not be as steep as Hardknott Pass, but it just goes on and on and on and on and on. It's a proper leg sapping climb. Right, so we're going to move on to climb number 7, which I say is my most difficult climb I've ever got up.
And I've just realised in the edit I never said the name of the climb. This climb is called Arthog.
Absolutely ridiculous. Let's go over the stats. So it averages 15%. It maxes 32%. It's a mile long. Simon Warreners gave it a rating of 10 out of 10. I think it's 11 out of 10. It's ridiculous. The first half a mile averages 20%. That's hard enough as it is, but what makes it even more difficult is the road surface. The road surface, there's moss on it, there's gravel on it. It felt like you was riding on sandpaper parts of it. And it was so horrible, the road surface. And even though it was the day where it was 30 degrees and we had sun the days before and it's bone dry, I was wheel spinning like mad, and it just made it 10 times harder than it needed to be. Also, it clocked up on my Wahoo 30% on 2 occasions. And it just goes on and on and on. And that first half a mile is brutal. The second half a mile averages 10%. But when you bear in mind the fatigue built up in your legs already from the war you've just had to endure going through the tree covers on that extremely steep, awfully surface road, 10% feels like 15%. But when you get to the top, the views are stunning and make it worthwhile. You can see out towards Barmouth, out to the coast. You can see into the mountains of Snowdonia. It's just stunning. I absolutely love this climb. And a climb I need to do again at some point. I don't know if it will be this year, but I'd like to go back again and just enjoy the scenery and just see if I've got fitter, if I can get up it quicker. But yeah, Arthog, by far, after like the 235-ish climbs I've done around England and Wales, Arthog is number 1 for difficulty. It's ridiculous. Right, so that's my 7 climbs, which I say are more difficult than the famous Hardknott Pass. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Comment below. Share your thoughts. Is there any climbs I've missed out which, no, this needs to be added to this list of 7 climbs as harder than Hardknott Pass? And of these 7, which ones are you thinking, right, I'm going to go try that out, see if Andrew's talking rubbish or if he knows what he's talking about. Thanks for watching. and I'll see you next time up another climb on 2 wheels.